Hey, I have the dirt on Kristi Candle, my co-host. And you know what? She's got the dirt on me. We just finished a really fun podcast where we talk about the 5 things that we wish we had done differently. Yeah, it's like, ugh, that sucked. You know what we're going to talk about? We're going to be open about it. And we're going to talk about the 5 things that we're glad that we did in real estate investing. So please join us on this next episode where we share the dirt on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast. 5 things we're sad we do differently, and 5 things we're glad we did, and hope you can learn from it. Thanks for joining us on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast.
Welcome to the Real Estate Pessimist, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. This is where we love real estate, but we pull back the curtain and help share with you the real behind the scenes on what actually happens. I'm Kristi Candle. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm a real estate developer, investor, and I teach locals how to redevelop properties in their own community. And I'm joined with my co-host, Erik Stimbakken.
Yeah, hey, Kristi. I've been in real estate investing since 2010, long-term rentals and vacation rentals. And well, a little bit of coaching in there too with those spaces. So we're going to talk about time machines today. You know, what would we do if we could go back and do things differently? Now, because we are not pessimists and we don't want you to misunderstand this, we're going to talk about things we are glad that we did also. And between the two of those things, we hope that this will maybe set some new sights for you. Or if you've done some of the things that we've done, you might say, okay, at least I'm not alone. They did this also. So we're going to talk about through what we wish we'd done differently and what we're glad we did. Kristi, hit us. We're going to do 5 of each, just so you know how this format's going to work. So Kristi, what's one thing you would do differently in your real estate journey?
My number one thing would have been getting the education and understanding first that a primary residence doesn't have to be a life sentence, which for me, setting down roots and being stuck in one community forever did seem like that. So I was in commercial real estate, but I refused to get into residential because I truly thought it was. And I'm wearing this shirt. It's a Bigger Pockets shirt that I got at one of the conferences in Nashville. But because I started listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast, that's why I then realized, oh, you can actually house hack and you could live in part, rent part, and make money on it. And then eventually you don't have to live there anymore. You could move on to the next place and your property expenses are paid for. So my number one thing is I really wish I would have started sooner. I am so glad today when I meet people who started at 18, 19, and they bought their first property and they made it a house hack, because I know how far ahead of the game they are, because compound interest is real. And the earlier you get in the game, the more experience you get, the better off you are. And also, quite frankly, you're okay with roommates. You're okay with living in houses that need completely gutted. Your tolerance for that is way better than it is the older you get. Now, when I have accidental live-in flips or construction projects, I am way more annoyed than before.
Awesome. Well, we didn't plan this. So she came up with hers and I came up with mine. And I was thinking about rearranging them to just kind of back and forth exactly match, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to jump right into mine. And it still matches. My first thing that I would do differently is I would start real estate investing sooner, simply because time is your ally. You know, they say that there are some investors who are better than Warren Buffett, but on a year-by-year basis. But he started sooner. Mm-hmm. And the way compounding works is the sooner you start a thing, once that logarithmic curve starts to kick up, that's where the crazy magic happens. And I just wish I had started real estate investing sooner. I had folks in my family, my grandparents, who bought rental places, but they didn't treat it like a business. And it didn't really go well for them. It wasn't a disaster, but it didn't go well. And so I never thought of real estate as a thing that was a legitimate business. Now I do. And I wish I had started sooner with something, anything, just simply started the process sooner. That's my number
true.
One.
So
What's yours?
True. I mean, for pessimists, we both just said we'd start even sooner. So there we go. My second one would be, I did learn, thankfully through one of my clients in the commercial world, her husband started using self-directed IRAs to invest in real estate. And that's when I first realized, oh, we don't just have to put our retirement money into the stock market that I don't even know or understand. We could also use it for real estate. Well, I wish that I would have put a little more effort into that because I was running multiple companies. And what I did with my self-directed IRA first is I bought a flip and I did everything wrong. I decided I didn't want to spend lots of money or risk my entire retirement. So I bought a house for $40,000.
Well,
Guess
that
where
must
that
have been a
house?
heck of a luxury
Yeah.
house for $40,000.
Guess where that house was? That house was in a neighborhood where SWAT comes multiple times a week, and the police department was literally creating software to better pinpoint where the gunshots were. Okay.
So, yeah. Okay, so when that's not your earnest money deposit, and that's not your down payment, that's the total payment. Yeah, okay, I could see that being a little risky.
But I thought, just dip my toe in, do a little bit. Okay, that project turned out to be the project from hell that ended up working out. Multiple contractors. I mean, I found drug needles in the windows from some contractors. There were everything wrong, like sewer lines busting, water mains busting, crackhead plumbers calling me in the middle of the night. It was very stressful. And for what? I ended up walking with $20,000 3 years later, and did not get the tax benefits that real estate gives you because it was already in my Roth and in my retirement. So I didn't get some of the benefits, and I had an intermediary to process the checks, so there was extra work involved. So I would have skipped flipping within my self-directed IRA.
So it's interesting you mentioned the IRA, which goes to another podcast that we have done where it talks about the government as your partner. You have to know the rules of the game. And if you use the rules to your advantage, you get a few more yards down the field than if you're like, whatever that is. So, okay, my number two, which thing that I wish I had done differently, was to invest in growth sooner. Both with a community. I mean, Kristi's wearing a bigger pockets shirt right there. Okay. And that investing in growth sooner would be both either in community or coaching or both.
Yep.
Right. There are lots of communities out there. Kristi and I met in one of them. And when you're with a group of people who are intentional about their growth, who share common interests, it's amazing. And I'm going to throw this out there too, is that when you join a paid community, I know people are like, I don't want to have to pay for anything. I want my education to be free. Okay, well, sit on the sidelines and wonder why other people are moving faster than you are. This is
what you pay for.
You get what you pay for and what you put into it. Okay, you can take coaching, you can be in a community and do absolutely nothing. You can just sit back, open your brain and say, all right, fill it up and do nothing. And that's not how you grow. But I resisted the idea of paying for something like that, paying for a coach, paying for community, whatever. But I will tell you that the times that I have invested in those things have been to my advantage. And I wish I had started that sooner, because it goes to my first point, is that these things compound over time. I think coaching is one of the only legitimate shortcuts you can get in the world when it comes to basically anything.
I couldn't agree more. I was just at a workshop this weekend and that Cody Sanchez put on, and she has created her small business boardroom. And it is literally to help make sure that 7-figure entrepreneurs can take their business to the next level faster. Why the hell, if she's already figured out the process, why would I not, as she says, steal from her so I can get further ahead? It's giving back, it's understanding, it's using this proven system and tools instead of reinventing the wheel. So not only am I an educator, but I also am someone who takes and has my own coaches and own education programs, because we can't do this alone. And if we do go alone, we're going to be a lot slower and have a lot more roadblocks. So completely agree with you on that.
If that doesn't tell you anything, that all the coaches that I have had coaches. Says something about the value of this, right? I mean, they're not spending money just to spend the money, just so they've got a coach, that they have a coach. They're doing it to move faster. Okay, what do you got for number 3? What would you do differently?
So I was toying with the idea of how do I, with all the businesses going, how do I still stay in the real estate game and maybe not be as active? So I ended up going the syndication route. And I actually remember asking a syndication attorney, why would someone invest in a syndication instead of just doing the project themselves? And it was the reason I ended up doing it, but it was not enough time, but you have the capital that you need to invest in order to offset taxes. I would have preferred that I had gotten into private money lending first, because in syndications,
as a syndicator, or you're investing in syndication?
Investing in syndications.
Okay.
I reserve the right to change my mind in the future, but I do not like the syndication model. I don't like the incentives not being aligned. Some are done properly, but I personally will probably never do a syndication as the GP. Now, I did invest in some as a limited partner in a couple of different ones. And the thought was, okay, do your homework up front, understand that they're going to be running the deal. And after your homework's done, you're giving them the money and that's it. I wish I would have spent a little more time exploring private money lending first, because that's a one-to-one. I now do that. And I've got operators that are out there doing these flips that have done it. And I've talked to them and known them for years, and just already being set up into those and seeing how that goes to where it is more passive if you have the right boots on the ground and you do have more control and more say-ish in it, in the deal. So I would have gotten into private money lending sooner and not syndications.
Interesting. My number 3, what I would do differently is vet better. Not I mean like I wish I had joined the military or anything like that. I mean to vet my builder, vet the community politics, whatever it is do my homework and then let that evidence teach me. Instead of me saying, I can will this to be something different than I want it to be. It's an easy thing I can see other people doing. I'm like, man, you can't bend reality to just be the way you want it to be. And yet, when I was the investor and I saw the deal, I wanted to bend reality to the way I wanted it to be. So that's one of the things that I wish I had done differently. And so when I say vet better, like my builder, we did a whole episode on that, how to lose $500,000 on one door. That's my story there, is to do my research better and believe what it tells me, right? Is that when people who know, like my banker in Tennessee who said, I'm not so sure about these guys, I should have stopped and just said, why? What tells you this isn't working? And why does it not work for you? And what red flags do you see? And if I had asked around a little bit more, we would have saved a lot of grief.
Why do you think you didn't ask more questions?
Because I wanted to believe the answer that I had already made in my mind, which is I'm going to make a ton of money because this is going to work out. And I didn't want to hear anybody tell me this might not work out like you think it will, right? We all have this bias to actually want the world to be the way we want it to be, and we avoid information to the contrary. There's a great book on the topic. We're doing that in the Growth and Mindset Reading Group right now. I had that up. If you're interested in a Growth and Mindset Reading Group, hey, shoot me an email. It's free to join. We're doing The Scout Mindset by Julia Galef, and it is about how to see the actual lay of the land instead of the way we want it to be. And when we see an anomaly that goes against what we thought it was, we do ourselves better to acknowledge reality than to wish it were different. That's one thing that I wish I had done. And when it comes to the politics in Maui and what's happening with the vacation rentals there, who knows how that's going to turn out. But if I had vetted that and looked that up and said, man, the way I see things going here is it's not looking good. If I had believed that instead of believed what I wanted to believe, that everything's going to be just fine, I would have avoided that whole mess. But I didn't. And so that's my number 3.
What do you think because we all hit that, and we have our spidey senses or intuition. Is that what kind of came up for you in those? And again, you said it was bias, but what could we maybe do? What practice could we do to maybe give ourselves the space to pause and maybe let that filter through?
I think the book, The Scout Mindset, I think is one of the things that we'll talk through tons of those ideas. One of them is seek disconfirming information. Okay. So instead of just going like, who's going to tell me yes? Let me look around the room here. We've all known this, right? We've all had a friend who did something that we knew was stupid. Like, oh man, that's stupid. Why didn't they ask anybody? The reason they didn't ask their friends is that they knew on some level that their friends would tell them that's a terrible idea. Now, I'm talking about asking people who know, right? I don't want to ask somebody about commercial real estate investing who has never invested in real estate at all, because of course they're going to tell me, oh, it's a terrible idea. That you could lose your bunch of money on doing that. Because guess what? They don't know what they're talking about. If I get into cryptocurrency, I'm going to ask people who know about cryptocurrency, right? And I want to ask disconfirming questions. I see this in presidential stuff all the time. Or CEOs do this, is they surround themselves with people who will only tell them what they want to hear. That is one of the most dangerous places you could be, because you're in a total bubble. And
when you're in an echo chamber, you're not hearing the other side of it. So you're not actually making an educated decision. You're making a decision that you hope is the right answer, even though it might not be.
Yeah. And so if you ask somebody intentionally, if I were going to buy a commercial building down here in the town where I live and was planning to renovate it, I would call Kristi and say, Kristi, why could this be a good idea? And why do you see this? And I have to be intentional about this. How could this go off the rails? And she may mention, oh, this could happen. Like, oh, okay, well, I didn't even think about that. And then I could look into it and say, oh man, wow, I can't afford to lose that. No. And sometimes, and we did another podcast about this, the difference between fear and prudence. Everybody talks about, everything you wanted is on the other side of fear, so push through fear. You know what? Sometimes fear is telling you, this could kill you. Don't do it. And so pushing through it relentlessly isn't heroic, it's stupid. However, there is the other side of, I should say, a different dimension of that. And that is simply prudence saying, okay, be cautious. Watch out for that. Doesn't mean you don't do it. It means you be intellectual about it, not emotional about it. And I think in both cases with the vetting, I let my emotions outpace my brain. I did not seek disconfirming information. And a little bit that I saw, I thought that I could will reality to the way I wanted it to be. And turns out, no.
Yeah. And it's just like you said earlier with community and coaching, it's who you surround yourself with, because I have a great group of friends, whether it's business owners or they're in real estate. And just last night we were having a conversation because one's looking at buying a certain underground contractor who does all the earthwork, does the underground utilities. And she's like, hey, I know this is your jam. This is what you do, real estate development. You work with these contractors all the time. She's like, poke holes in what I'm doing. She's like, I'm pretty sure this is a good idea, but please poke holes in it. Tell me from your experience, because you have more in this angle. And we bounced through a lot of ideas, and then even talked about different verticals and types of companies that would be synergistic and some we might stay away from. So when you have the right friends and the right community around you, you will go further faster as a result, and you will save. Sometimes not doing the deal is just as important as doing the deal.
Absolutely. And I say, I'm going to add to that, pay for it. Offer to pay people to say, hey, would you walk this property with me? I want to pay you to give me your unbiased opinion about this. And sometimes the best people are people who don't have a pony in that race. If I ask a builder to walk through a renovation with me or something like that, who does not stand to get the work from the renovation, well, they don't care if I do it or don't do it. I'm paying them for their time, and they look at that. It's worth it, people. If you pay somebody $250, say, I'm going to take you to lunch, and you're going to walk away with $250, and I want your professional opinion about this thing. First of all, you're telling people that you value their opinion. And sometimes, as Kristi said, walking away from the deal is worth more than going, because all the podcasts, all the stories are all about I won big, I went against everything everybody ever said to do, and I won anyways. You know what? What doesn't happen is the 100 podcasts where people lost their Schwartz because they went ahead and went against opinions and advice of smart people. And they did, in fact, lose. And guess what? Nobody has them on his podcast guests, because who's going to want to listen to a loser, right? So please understand that sometimes avoiding a bad deal is worth as much or more than getting a great.
Hey, can we talk business for a second? If you've been flipping houses or running short-term rentals, you already know how to hustle. You know how to spot opportunity, add value, and make a property work harder. But if we're being honest, flipping gets exhausting, and short-term rentals are definitely not passive. So what's next? For a lot of people I work with, the answer is real estate development. I'm talking about turning a vacant lot into a quadplex, or bringing a rundown building back to life as a mixed-use space. I'm Kristi Candle, and I've been a real estate developer my entire career. And now I host the Local Real Estate Developer podcast to help locals like you do the same. we pull back the curtain and show you what it takes to go from flipper or host to local developer. If you're ready to build something bigger, this podcast is for you. Check out the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast on all platforms.
Deal. Kristi, what's your number 4?
My next one is kind of along the lines of that, in the sense of follow your buy box. If something is outside of your buy box, don't do it. My buy box is I want to force appreciation, and I also don't want tons of maintenance nightmares down the road. And unfortunately, in this case, so what that means, though, is that I'm buying properties that do need significant rehab, and sometimes we're gutting them to the studs. But that also means that when it's done, I know that my major CapEx things are behind us, that the tenants we put in, whether they're short-term or long-term, are going to have they're not going to have issues of something, a leaky faucet and pipes breaking. In theory, they're not going to have that, or we've mitigated that risk and reduced it quite a bit. Well, in this one, I ended up buying a duplex. It was in Ohio, and it was one that had just been remodeled. And I looked at the photos. I had just, in that same swoop of the year, I accidentally bought 4 properties. This was part of that. And I think I was honestly at the airport about to get on a flight. And I'm like, let's throw in an offer for that. That seems great. It's in the general area. We already have the teams in place. Like, 2 more units. We'll make it a long-term rental. It's in a neighborhood that's turning. It'll be great. A great appreciation play. And we don't need the contractor for that one, but we've got a team if we do. Okay, well, if you ever buy a remodeled place from someone who flips houses, please go walk that yourself. This was lipstick on a pig. This was had I walked, I would have seen that. Oh, I walked through the floors. They tilt down. Oh, just everything about it. The tile work in the bathroom, the kitchen, everything would have screamed to me and said, oh, heck no, because if what I see is sketchy, what I don't see is even more scary. Right. What the heck is in the walls? What is in the ceiling? What's in the flooring? So from that, I did not have the right team in place, because the people that I thought I could trust walking it, I was just getting to know them. They were just getting to know me. One had some stake in it because she was going to be the realtor, so she was going to make the commission on it. The other was a contractor that ended up ghosting me. So not having the right people do that and on the team was a detriment. Now, I will say, if you learn from the ones that you don't necessarily win from, what it did make me do is, after buying the house for $40,000 and after buying this duplex, I then had someone that I trusted dearly, and he has walked every property for me since, and a very good friend since kindergarten. But also, I knew from his houses, he hasn't bought investment property, but every house they have has been an accidental live-in flip that his wife will kill him for. But I knew he knew my standard and what we were looking for. So photos just hide subpar rehab. So if you don't have the right team in place, make sure that you get there physically. And actually, it goes back to what you just said. I wanted it to work. I was looking for confirmation bias. I was looking for reasons it should work, not reasons it shouldn't. Now, thankfully, I do think I just saw an email come through that we might be in contract to sell this lovely one, because it was supposed to be a long-term rental. Caliber of people who were going to rent and how much they would have paid would not have covered the bills, and it would have been an operations nightmare. Randomly, it was able to turn into a short-term rental, so it never sucked money from us, but every time we would build up reserves, the roof would leak. Some dryers would break. Something would happen. And the guests, because it was more of a budget rental, it was a constant operations nightmare. So this is one where, yes, on paper, we will have the appreciation and it will look like we won, but I would rather have those days and nights and weeks and years back.
Yep, I hear you. Some of the best investments that I have are because we had defined a very tight buy box. I mean, a very tight buy box. And these properties were absolute bullseyes. I mean, they literally, on one of them, we split the arrow. On the first one, we got a second one just like it. Now, they were not cheap. And this is where Warren Buffett's advice comes in. I think he said he would rather get a fair, no, how does he say that? He'd rather get a fair price on a great property than a great price on a fair asset.
Yep.
I think there's a lot to that, is that we paid, we paid a fair price. We paid full market price for an outstanding asset. And yes, that pays better because there's a reason why sometimes people pass on those less expensive things and have a buy box. Have a tight buy box. Now, my number 4 things that I would do differently is related to your first one, Kristi, is my primary home. I would have started to see my primary home as a money maker, as an asset. I know there's the arguments out there, Kiyosaki, your house is not an asset. And that's because he's defining it how it makes you money. But also, you know what I'm going to say is that saving money is sometimes worth more than making money. Because if you save $10,000, you don't have to earn $15,000, pay the taxes on it, do all the work, and then have $10,000 left over if you can save $10,000. So I think some of these things I did well, some of these things I could have done differently. I would have, I think, looked at my houses and said, could I get a duplex? Could I have bought a slightly bigger house than I did initially and rented out some of the rooms of this? I didn't know that was a thing. I had no idea. I wasn't aware of this, which goes back to my first one, start real estate investing sooner, get a growth in community and coaching. I would have known these things, but I didn't. And that's okay. I know them now. I'm doing them. But I would have started to use my primary home. That's the first thing. Now, one thing I don't do that some people would, actually I say I don't do it, but I did do it, is use the capital in my primary home for investing purposes. Personally, where I'm at right now, we had to do a HELOC to get ourselves out of a super tight story. We did a podcast on that disaster. And so I had to use that. But otherwise, I want to keep that a little bit safer, right? I don't want to gamble. I'll gamble with house money, so to speak, but not with my personal money. And I view my primary home as a personal home. But still, here's an example of how I could have used it better, is that our first home that we moved into, we did a lot of renovations in those last 6 months before we moved out. We're like, wow, this house is so much nicer. And then we could have lived in it. And we sold it and made some money, moved into the next house. Well, the next house, what we did, we learned our lesson, is we did those improvements immediately, right? And then we added the value immediately. But what I didn't know, and I probably would have been more aggressive with the whole thing, is that the money that you make from a primary home that you've lived in 2 out of 5 years, that's current situation going on with taxes, you don't pay capital gains on it. If you sell it for, I think right now it's $250,000 per person, $500,000 as a couple, married couple. That's a lot of money. And if you plan it right and do a live-in flip, that can actually be income. And it's the best kind of income because it's income you're not taxed on. I mean, where else does that happen? So I would have started to use my primary home as an investment vehicle sooner and been more intentional about it from a tax perspective also, not just income perspective, but tax perspective. Had I known about that.
I absolutely love that one. And yeah, being able to, I've house hacked every property I'm in. I was just telling someone, I'm like, once I realized someone else can pay for me to live somewhere for free, or I might even make money while living there, I'm like, I don't know why I would do any other way. And I have friends that go, don't you just want your own house and your own stuff that people don't use? Because even every property now, like if I'm living in Florida, I'm Airbnb-ing Tahoe. If I'm living in Tahoe, I'm Airbnb-ing Florida. Yes, that means other people have been on my couch, on my bed. And I truly do not care because it's just like a hotel room in that sense. But also stuff isn't what motivates me. It's the experiences, the relationships, the people. So if someone else is going to pay for me to have a better life, bring it on.
100%. We ran into that with our very first STR. People would say, you can't stand it that people are like staying in your bed. And I'm like, those people are buying my house for me. Oh, welcome to my bed. Yeah, it's like, go for it. That's what made me happy. It wasn't the weirdness like, they're going to be using your silverware. I'm like, yeah, and they're buying my house for me. Awesome. Yeah. Guess what? I have a dishwasher. I'll throw this stuff in there. I am co-host of this podcast because education is my calling. That's also why I developed a course on short-term rentals. It's called STR in an Hour, and it's perfect for busy professionals. It's a lot of content packed into 1 hour. No fluff, no upsell. It's an overview of STRs from A to Z. Everything from how to choose a property to how to estimate income and expenses. It's literally the best and most content I could pack into 59 minutes. With over 4,000 nightly stays in my own STRs, I've learned important lessons, and I want to share them with you. Link with more information in the show notes. Yay! They're buying it for me. And so there was a mindset shift for me. And once that happened, like, there's no going back. There's just no going back. I mean, there's very few things now that I buy that I say, I'll just pay for the whole thing so I can have it. When it comes to real estate, now.
Yep. And you go anywhere else in the world and you realize just how privileged we are to be able to say, no, that's mine. And it's not run down, and it's not a shack or a cot or a torn up blanket. So we are very privileged to be where we're at all. So perspective sometimes.
How about your number 5?
All right, number 5. I think the overall lesson would be, just because you have cash to deploy, you have the right team, and you know the market inside and out, does not necessarily mean you should buy that property. This one is a project that we went into contract in late 2019. We closed in early 2020, and it is mid 2025 right now, and it is still the bane of my existence. We could have a podcast for a year on this property. So one of the very first things that we did is when we walked the property, and it was a complete gut job. This guy was a slumlord. He talked down and so terribly to the tenants. It was disgusting. It made your stomach turn. And as we were doing that, we, got to see that some of the tenants, there's definitely some drugs, possibly some prostitution going on, but it was also, then part of our heart went, yeah, but nobody should be living in this. Like, this needs to be taken away from the slumlord guy, and better housing needs to be created for these people, because no one should be in these living conditions. And we knew we had the team. We've gutted things to the studs with this team. That part wasn't scary to us. But what we did is, because we had a heart and we were compassionate, is we allowed the tenants, we did not force the property owner to give notice to the tenants prior to purchasing. And there's multiple ways we could have negotiated it, but those are problem tenants that we knew we might have a hard time getting out. So I would do that part differently. At the same time, instead of giving the required notice of 30 days, we gave 60 days, because we understood how hard it was to find housing in that market. And we wanted to have compassion and have a heart. And we gave them more time to relocate instead of the 30 days. Well, what ended up happening during that is that it wasn't quite COVID yet, but...
I can see this coming.
Right. But what happened was, when someone chose not to move out, then COVID happened in the middle of that. And while we're going through the eviction process to get them out, 3 days prior to our final hearing to a fully evict, moratorium, can't evict. So now we have one of the 4 tenants. One of them, we kind of had to go, bro, you got to leave. And he finally agreed to leave. One left on their own terms, and another had a lease that went through June. And we said, hey, if you guys are cool with construction around, we have no problem with you staying. But if you want to leave early, we can work out a deal. So we ended up, the tenant who we had to evict, and it took about 8 months to get to that point where we could go through an eviction, just created quite a mess, because we could only rehab certain units, and then we had to pull the guys off the job to go to another project. So it was the rehab that was from hell, and we can laugh about it now. But it was very crazy, and we have lots of memories. But at the same time, we had used a hard money loan, mostly just to see, okay, how does hard money loans work? So we used that to buy the property, and it was, 100,000 or 200,000, and we were going to put 300 into it. But the minute COVID happened and we had the eviction, I said, nope, I'm going to be the funder of construction, because we can't have, 10, 12% interest running out the door when we don't know where the finish line is. Right. So again, just because you have the cash to deploy doesn't mean you should. Full cycle, we still have some outstanding permit issues and things that we're going through with that property. And it's, for how much time it has taken from us, the opportunity cost of what that was, I think we would all agree. And we'll be fine. Again, the numbers will show that we're fine, but sometimes it's the mental load that happens and the toll that you take that is maybe worth not taking on that deal or that project just because you can. And there were plenty of signs that we could have listened to our intuition and spidey senses. And sometimes you just get them wrong. But that would be one I'd prefer we probably walked away.
Wow. Okay, so there's some themes going on here. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Um, true thing. True thing. And this is what makes it hard, is because some people say, well, there's an opportunity. You just got to go for it. And sometimes that's right. And sometimes that's not. And sometimes in retrospect is the only way to tell which way that was going to be. My number 5 thing that I would do differently, I just changed it like literally just now. So I'm like, I don't know if I love that other 5 one, is I would work on my mindset sooner. I think that is one of the most valuable assets that I could have. And it trumps, knowing about asset classes and about vetting builders, although vetting builders is more expensive if you do it wrong. But mindset, if you don't have mindset, a good, healthy mindset, and part of that is a resilient mindset. And that's one of the reasons Kristi and I have this podcast, is to just show you that, like, hey, things go wrong. Things go sideways. Even for people who have good mindset, who think ahead, who have experience, stuff goes sideways. Mm-hmm. And a resilient mindset says, okay, that sucked. What can I learn from that? How can I make the best from this? And where do I go from here? Less grit, to use Angela Duckworth's term there, who just says, that's it. I'm out. Forget it. I quit. and then that's when you stop, right? When you lay down the ball and you walk off the field, well, that's where it stops for you. If you got a bad hit, but you get back up again and say, all right, I'm not going to do that again. I will do better. Mindset is a thing that I came to probably 5-6 years ago. Started really thinking about this, maybe a little bit more. Hard for me to pinpoint it. And I had thought it was woo up until then. I'm like, oh, please. I mean, reality is what it is, and you can't make it be different just because of the way you think about it. Now, I'm not so sure that that's true. Now, Kristi and I just did another podcast about working with the government as your partner, whether you like them or don't like them. And I will tell you this, is you can't make the world just be what you envision it to be or what you want it to be, right? So that part remains true. There's an element of reality that doesn't conform to my wishes. But there is another part of reality that does, in fact, reshape based on my mindset. I can't explain the metaphysics of that, but it's a thing that I wish that I had researched, thought about, studied, worked on earlier, because I think that I would have done more and bigger things and sooner had I known that.
That is something that everyone that comes into the coaching program says, and it's true. It's, if you work on your mindset, the rest of it will then flow. So advice to anyone who's out there, start young and work on your mindset, get the right people around you, and I promise that will put you exponentially further ahead of us. And that's our goal, is to put a hand back and to help someone else up, so that way you don't just get to where we're at, that you freaking sail past it and you set a new bar and you bring someone else along with you. So on that note, we now have 5 things that we're really glad we did when we got into real estate investing. So Erik, what's your first one?
I'm glad I bought versus renting. I know there's the whole, just rent and deploy your money elsewhere, blah, 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 blah. No, you know what? Me, personally, I'm glad that I bought. The place that I'm in right now, my studio, it was part of an unfinished basement, huge unfinished basement. We finished it out for about 12% of the cost of the overall house. Come on, where can you get that kind of square footage? We almost doubled the square footage of our home for, I think it was between 12 and 15% more than the purchase price. Wow, hello. And we've been here over 20 years. And you start looking at the rent that I would have paid during that time, and the appreciation that this house has had, and how we have used it as equity. And this is now my studio. And I have another studio upstairs that I've used for commercial photo shoots, for rebuilding my van. It's a big garage. Okay. It's a very big garage. And over the years, over 20 years, I have not had to rent a studio except for one time outside of this. And so I'm glad that I bought versus renting. Now, not the right answer for everybody, but that's one thing that I'm glad that I did from the get-go. How about you?
I mean, that rolls into my number one. My number one thing that I'm really glad I did is that I've constantly invested in house hacks. Because my very first home that I invested in, I ended up making a six-figure profit to where I then paid off my student loans that were $85,000. And I always joked that some sugar daddy someday would pay it off and they would magically go away. Turns out I was the sugar mama and I magically made it go away by making smart decisions. It's lowered my living costs over the years. I've maximized my cash flow, got rid of, that heavy cloud of student loan debt. And honestly, all of the house hacking and things over the years turned into the property I'm in now, which was literally as a kid, my dream home, a house on an island with a pool and a dock. Like that is all possible because of house hacking and real estate.
There you go. So people can argue about like, no, you should always rent. You know what? Have the arguments. Don't invite me because I don't care. I'm just telling you that this is what I did and it worked awesome for me. Glad I did it. Number two, again, very counter to a lot of the real estate investing culture. I am glad I left money in some of my deals. Yeah. The Burr method, go take every bit of equity you possibly can get out of your property and put it into more property, leverage yourself out. Fine, there's a place for that. And if everything works perfectly, always according to plan with no hiccups, that's a great idea. But I don't know if your life is like my life, but my life has not always gone 100% according to plan. And I have used equity in our properties, in our investment properties, and they have saved our bacon when things went really sideways, really bad. And we had to come up with hundreds and 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 hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash to not run this thing, run a deal off the rails and basically have this build foreclosed. We needed money. And that money, like yours, to pay off the student debt, did not come from a sugar daddy, did not come from a rich uncle that I didn't know existed. It came from real estate. We were able to pull the money out of that and basically save our bacon. And that is because we did not leverage everything to the max. You want to do that? That's worked for you? Awesome. But I will warn you with this, is that podcasts and books are filled with survivor bias. In other words, they're interviewing the people and they're writing about the people who dodged it, right? I mean, if you ever saw, I got kids, right? And so we watched Cars lots of times. At the very beginning of Cars, our hero runs through this wreck and all the cars are wrecking everywhere. And he just somehow dodges all the cars and he's basically the only one left on the track. And so he wins. So guess who gets interviewed? Of course, the winner, right? Happens in real estate investing too, is that when things go sideways and they wreck, and the one person who got incredibly lucky and didn't get wrecked in that gets interviewed and everybody goes, oh, well, that's the plan. Let's do that. I don't know. Play it however you want to, but I'm glad that we left some money in our assets and had that to pull on when we needed to. Also, it leans towards Chad Carson's, what he talks about is getting, your last phases of investing it's not your acquisition phase, it's kind of a little bit of a drawdown phase, is that having tons of debt on absolutely everything is not necessarily how you finish that up. Yep. And on that Chad Carson thing, if somebody knows Chad Carson and we can get him on the podcast, let's do that. Yeah, send us a note. We'd love to get him on here because he talks some reality that I very much like. So anyways, leaving some money in my deals was one thing that I'm glad that I did. Kristi.
Yeah, I love that. Mine, I'm glad I did, is that when I was listening to Bigger Pockets and I heard them send mailers out to these communities, and I remember looking across Highway 50 in Tahoe and I went, I have a dog. Townhomes have thin walls and they don't have fenced in yards. I know that we're about to get an event center. I know we're about to build $1 million condos here. And I know that there's a neighborhood of about 70 parcels that used to be, the drug area, a little rundown. But I know that's turning. So I decided to go ahead and, throw a flyer out there. And I literally wrote letters to all owners. And I said, basically, hey, I live across the highway. My dog, we're in a townhome. My dog would love a fenced in backyard. If anyone wants to sell, give me a call. And from that, I got my primary residence that was in a single family home that is now, it literally is a cow that prints money. And then through that same mailing list, I was able to get a fourplex 2 streets down that was, again, another gold mine that has been turned into, both have tripled in equity, and they are, with the new Barton Hospital that's coming in, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't significantly like double, at least from where they're at right now. So I think that also demonstrates the power of locals, not outsiders, actually know what's happening. So even if you think your community might be saturated, you're the one who knows specific pockets in your community and what's happening.
Right.
And if you pay attention at those public hearings, and you know what's being built and what's coming, that'll give you insights to maybe go find that deal early on, because it's not that it's done and there's no more deals to be had because we don't have 2 and 3 and 4% interest rates. It's same thing as before. It's the principles, and it's, do you know your market? Do you know what's happening? Do you know where growth is going? And then you can go buy based on your local knowledge.
Awesome. So you did a little bit of work. You invested in some stamps and some envelopes and wrote some letters, and it worked.
Yeah.
I wrote some yellow letters too. And I didn't end up buying a property, but I ended up making an offer on one. And my mailing list was, I think, 70 or less also. So it doesn't, folks, these things don't have to be, well, you got to send out 10,000 mailers a month. You got to have a staff of 7 people and an acquisitions manager and you don't have to do that. So Kristi took a little bit of a risk. No. Is that even a risk? I mean, you spent $50 on stamps and envelopes. So I don't think in the real estate world, we can even call that a risk, right?
It was
the
ego
worst case
risk, if anything. The worst case would have been no one responded to me, and I went, "Oh, did I do something wrong?" Who cares?
Or I had somebody write back to me. Actually, they sent me a super cool retro postcard and said, "We will definitely never sell to you." I was like, "Oh, well, that's a cool postcard." And like, guess what? Yes, I was like, "Awesome!" My response rate went up. Okay, so I'm glad you did that too. One of the things that I'm glad that I did, which is related to the other, is just keeping more in my properties than I should. Actually, you know what? I think that's a double. Leaving money in my deals, keeping more equity in my properties. Yeah, maybe I'll think of another one here.
It's so true in the sense of like they always say, oh, put 3 to 5% down if you can. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And just because your property might have appreciated massively also doesn't mean that you should take that equity out. So I do think it's 2 different ones. And it's just reframing how we're hearing everything that's there.
All right, I'm going to pick out another one because I think that 2 and 3 for me were basically the same. What I'm glad I did. How about you? What's your...
so I've been in commercial real estate and real estate development where you have different types of loan products. And I'm really glad that once I realized that buying a house that you live in as your primary is not a life sentence. I'm really glad that I then leveraged that to go, oh, I can now live in all these different places and lock in these 30-year fixed rate debt to where you can't get that in the commercial world. So there's something super valuable about that. So I'm really glad that I have that because it's predictable and it helps me go, okay, I have time. So if something happens in the market, I have the time to wait for things to turn around and I don't need to reset my loan. So really glad for locking in the 30-year fixed rate ones.
Awesome. I just thought of what I'm going to put in there instead of the last one. And that is the book, The Gap and the Gain, and starting to think like that. Ramit Sethi has a book out, Money for Couples, which I would recommend to anyone who is in a couple situation or ever wants to be. It's related to Die with Zero. That book, excellent book, talking about basically what is your rich life? And and this is really important, and are you living that more now than you think you are? Because Kristi and I have talked about moving your goalposts. It's like, and you're never done, and you're never done. One of the things that I'm glad that I've done is reading a lot. Growth and Mindset Reading Group, you can join if you want to. And it's just paying attention to what is my rich life. And you know what part of my rich life is right now that I'm glad I'm doing is this podcast. Right now with Kristi. I mean, right now it is a Tuesday at 10 a.m. And guess what? neither of us had to ask permission from our employer. I've got a friend of mine yesterday. He told me he can't get away from his desk to go to the bathroom until he's allowed to for one of his 2 15-minute breaks. He can't take texts. He can't take phone calls. And you know what? That's the reality of where he's at. And so I am glad that that I'm here and being metacognition, aware that I'm aware that I can be here. And so I'm glad that I'm doing these things when I can, because who knows, maybe I can't always, but right now I can. And I'm super grateful and glad that I can. And I want to recognize that fact as it's happening. Like, this is the journey and this is cool. And so I'm glad that I'm doing this.
I love that. I love that.
Kristi.
Same. Number 4 for me would be being willing to break my mindset of I just want to do it myself and create companies and businesses by myself, and to realize that when you're getting into real estate investing, that if you strategically partner, and we've done an episode on partnerships, but if you strategically partner with the right people and you bring in complementary pieces, it is so much more fun and fulfilling than doing everything by yourself. You get to share the risk, you get to share the workload, and if you have complementary skills, what feels heavy to you is carried by the other person it feels light to them. And it really helps eliminate burnout, not eliminate, but it helps you stave off burnout. And then you can do more because you have, it's that opportunity cost. If your time is all sucked into you doing that one deal, which so many of us investors think it's just me on this flip, it's just me on this job. What are you missing out on? And whether it's learning or educating or paying attention to deals in the market and building up potentially a pipeline, but what are you missing out on as a result? So I think smart strategic partnering is a big one that I'm glad I did early.
Yeah, and Kristi knows a lot of people. I'm constantly amazed. Like, hey, I met this person. Oh, I got this other person. Oh, you should meet this person. And it's this podcast wouldn't be the same podcast that it is if it was just my podcast or just Kristi's podcast. You know, we each have things that we bring to this that make it what it is. And so it's a partnership that I'm glad that I get to be a part of. So yay for partnerships. Number 4 for me is I'm glad that I took the real estate investing leap. You know, I can look at the losses, and we have the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, and we joke about that. It's not all sunshine all the time, which is true. It is not all sunshine all the time. But on the whole, I'm so glad I did that. I am so glad. Basically, we made a decision it was before 2010. It was about 2009, 8, where we decided we are not going to live in our dream house. We're going to have other people live in our dream house, and they're going to pay for our life. And that is way the heck better than me having a dream house, you know, with 3,500 square feet and a 2-acre yard that I maintain, and that's all I get. Oh, you know, we're going to go to Maui, and unfortunately, it's a business expense because I own a property there, and we're going to work on that. And we're going to go to Tennessee to do some work to see some people that I like there, and it's a business expense. And we're going to drive to Grand Lake, and we're going to we're legitimately doing work while we're there. If you have been listening to this podcast at all, you know Kristi and I work our butts off. Okay.
And I'm sorry, you walk up to a property you own, you are never not looking at things going, oh man, and finding things and fixing things and running to the hardware store multiple times. The only time 100%. I don't is if I am traveling and I'm in a hotel room that I am not going to fix, or if I am staying at someone's house and I'm not going to fix their house either. Any other That's time, right. I just did a project this morning, by the way. So yes, you're always working.
You're always working. But I'm glad that I took the leap, because the wins and the flexibility and the person that I've become as a result of it are far, far, far better than if I had not jumped in at all. So I'm glad I did it. You know, in spite of the losses, and we've had some whoppers, I'm still glad that we did it. Kristi.
So true. All right, number 5 for me. We kind of touched on the concept earlier, but it's not needing to make more money if you save money. So for me, another catalyst for why I even got into real estate was I had a CPA tell me, well, you either need to have kids or you need to buy property to offset your tax from your W-2 and from my business and then my W-2 income from that. And so learning and wrapping my head around cost segregations, bonus depreciation, and how buying real estate could actually save me tons of money, to where the paper losses then translated into not only cash flow, but into a net worth now that is far exceeded any imagination, the expectation I could have had. And just understanding those rules and understanding how to smartly put in checkpoints with your CPA to say, hey, we're in October. Do I need to buy something by the end of the year? Right. That's why I bought where I'm at right now in Florida, and then also down in Naples. And that was constantly being able to offset large tax burdens by owning more assets. Work smarter, not harder.
Yep. And so did another episode on this, partnering with the government, and taxes is one of those things. It is a key component to what you're doing. You know, I don't watch a lot of sports, but it would be kind of like the tax game is, you can think about it as offense or defense, but it's like your key player. If you're not playing your key player, sorry, you're not going to win. And so partnering with your taxes intentionally is a huge win. Kind of makes me wish I'd have picked one of those for mine, but I didn't. My number 5 is I am glad I joined community. And paid community is different because it just weeds out the people who are not willing to spend $50 or $300 or whatever it happens to be. Like, I'm not going to do that. Okay, don't. That's okay. And I've got plenty of friends who are in those communities, and I'm still part of some of that. That's okay. But there's something about getting people who are intentional about it and who will put money and time commitment to it that is incredibly valuable. So community and coaching, I'm glad that I have invested in those things.
So true.
Yeah. So for me, those are the things that I'm glad that I did.
I love it.
Some of the things I wish I'd done a little differently.
I feel like some people might listen to this and go, wait, I think they actually like real estate. Maybe they're the pessimists that we thought they were.
No, at the end of the day, this is when we add it up, it is still a thing that we're doing, and it's still a thing we want to move forward on, and a tool that we both believe is really important. But I will say this too, as we wrap up this episode, for me, and I would wager to say this is true for Kristi too, because we did a podcast about this, about our values. It's that my value and who I am and what I think is of worth for life isn't just what I do for money. Is that this is a means to an end, which is a life that I want. And Kristi had a very vivid vision of what she wanted to have as a life. And it turned out this was the tool for it. But I think I could speak for both of us, our identity isn't this. And we have fun with the Real Estate Pessimist podcast. And in some ways, we're like, yeah, we need to tell the truth about this because it's not always sunshine and rainbows. But at the end of the day, guess what? Life is made up largely of work. Yep, it is. And you might as well do something that you enjoy with people that you like.
Yes.
That gives you the flexibility that you want, but you will pay the price of this, because I've been in a condo on Maui. One of the times we were there recently, we were probably 300 yards from the beach. And the only reason I went to the beach for about 45 minutes, that entire vacation, my wife never went to the beach, was because somebody went swimming at the beach and they shouldn't have been there by themselves. That's it. That's the only time I got to go to the beach the whole time we were in Maui. So don't look at me and be like, oh, it must be nice to just like sit on the beach and just sit there all day long. It's like, you know what? If you want to come to Hawaii and keep up with me sometime when I'm working, let's go. You know, I'm going to be heading over to one of my properties here not far away and firing up the chainsaw. And you want to help me cut down that huge tree? You just get on your hard hat and let's go. Because there's lots of hard work that we do, but there's the upside. And what people want is they want just the upside. They don't want any of the downside. And we're here to tell you on this podcast, they go together. These concepts of hard work and the rewards you get, they're married. They're not distant cousins. They are together, and you don't get one without the other.
So true. So true. You want to take us out of here?
Oh man, we did it, Kristi. We did it. We talked about the things that we would do differently, and I hope you all learned some things from that. and some of the things that we're glad that we did. And so, although we offer these as inspirational tales and cautionary tales, this isn't advice. We're not telling you go out and buy a multifamily or do this and that on your taxes or anything else. Don't go swim alone. It's not advice for that either. Get professional advice when it comes to things like taxes. And we both talked about this, is the importance of getting input from people who know what they're doing. And so we don't offer that just as a cover our butts thing at the end of these podcasts. We're telling you this because it matters. If you're going to do well when it comes to taxes, you need to get someone who actually knows what they're doing with taxes. If you're going to get into partnerships and you need a partnership attorney, get an attorney that works with you on this. You want to set up a business entity. Guess what? Get someone who does this kind of stuff, because we are big believers. We both hire professionals when it comes to these things. We want to encourage you to do that too. And yes, you can learn some free things on the internet, and we hope that it inspires you. But my goodness, that is not an excuse to not hire the right people for the right jobs. That said, this is the Real Estate Pessimist Podcast, where we talk consistently about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. We hope you find value in this. That's why we do it. That you can share this with friends. Leave us a review. That helps. Shoot us an email. I don't know. Send us a package of cookies. Whatever inspires you. We hope that this is of value to you. And thanks for joining us.